Today on my drive, I am furious with a member of the Lucha Underground roster. You can probably guess who. And I am loving Breezango and the Fashion Files. So much so that I compare them to this tag team. Well, you'll have to find out today on the Go Home Spot. Welcome to the Go Home Spots, part of the Wrasslun Show Network. And the only thing that keeps me sane as I navigate these highways home. I'm Jeff DeHaan, and unfortunately I'm going to start the show this week on a bit of a sour note. While it's not necessarily news, it's almost a week old now. I can't not talk about this whole sexy star Rosemary situation, because it really bothers me. While I haven't talked about it a great deal on the show, I am actually a big Lucha Underground fan. I only recently stopped watching it on a weekly basis because I just didn't have the time. I had to cut out something, and it wasn't going to be NXT because I'd really gotten into NXT during Lucha Underground's hiatus, so then when Lucha Underground came back, while it was still quality programming, I couldn't balance everything, and especially since I basically report on all the WWE stuff for the Go Home Spot, something had to give. But during my fandom of Lucha Underground, I really took to Sexy Star. It's not even that she's the best worker in there, and she's obviously not the first woman to mix it up with guys, especially even if you're only a WWE fan. You've still had Beth Phoenix and Chyna. I guess I'm just a sucker for a good underdog story, and they really played her up as one of the top baby faces. She even, not long before they went on hiatus, had won the Lucha Underground Championship. So it was a big deal, and I was a fan. So when I had heard about what happened at Triplemania XXV between her and Rosemary, I was so utterly disappointed. And I can't even make, some joke like, I'm not mad. I wasn't mad. I was just disappointed. Because I was pretty pissed off, too, to be honest. For anyone who doesn't know the story, Sexy Star was involved in a match at Triplemania XXV, which is AAA, their WrestleMania, basically. It's their biggest show of the year in Mexico. And she was in this match against Rosemary. I believe it was a four-way. I'll be honest, I haven't gotten details about the match because I've mostly just focused on the situation as it stands between these two women, but I believe it was a fatal four-way. At one point, Sexy Star was taken out of the ring. She came back in, seemed pretty hot, took out one of the other competitors with a steel chair, and then proceeded to put Rosemary in an arm bar and wrenched her arm and basically intentionally tried to hurt her. Reports coming out of it were that Rosemary had a dislocated shoulder. Rosemary herself recently tweeted that the injuries wound up being strained tricep and bicep, so it wasn't as bad as a lot of initial reports were saying. But still, you don't intentionally try to hurt someone in there. It's one thing if somebody's working a little stiff or a little snug, or someone's throwing potatoes out there, especially if you got two friends in there. Like, I guarantee you, when, like, say, Matt and Jeff Hardy or Edge and Christian are fighting one another, they're probably a little stiffer than they are with the average wrestler. But there's a difference between being stiff and putting a legit submission hold on someone to intentionally injure them. And that's what bothers me the most. I guess because I was a fan. I suppose if I was indifferent towards Sexy Star, I'd still be upset, but maybe I wouldn't be as upset as I am. But it's just something you don't do. It's a physical enough sport, yes, I'm going to call it a sport, as it is. There's enough risks of injury and enough risks to people's personal health and well-being when all parties are trying to be careful, let alone when someone's reckless like that or just doesn't care. No, that's bullshit. So it's safe to say, with the outpouring of social media from all corners of wrestling, from WWE and NXT folks to promotions in England to indie promotions, Ring of Honor, pretty much everyone, for obvious reason, has Rosemary's back here. And in one fell swoop, Sexy Star pretty much blackballed herself from the entire wrestling community. She might still be able to have a career in Mexico, but good luck getting booked anywhere else, sweetheart. Moving on to happier subject matter, also involving women's wrestlers. The Mae Young Classic dropped this week. Unfortunately, I'm a bad wrestling fan. I have yet to actually watch any of it, and it's not that I don't want to. This was a killer week. I just haven't had the time. My goal is to binge it over the weekend, get all 4 episodes in, and then hopefully next week I'll have a chance to watch. And if not, then at least maybe I can binge watch the second round of episodes next weekend. But I've heard nothing but good things. I've actually avoided reading the Wrasslun show's Adam Conta's reviews that he's posted on Facebook because I don't want any spoilers. Even if they're spoiler-free as far as who wins or loses, I want to go into these matches as blind as possible. So as I said, I'm hoping to binge watch all 4 episodes this weekend. Maybe I'll put up my own review. We'll see. Go Candice LeRae. I'm going to talk about the ladies from Monday Night Raw right after this.
Hey, it's Adam Conta.
Hey, I'm Drew Ferris.
We came up with the idea for this show, Ropes to Reels, where we talk about movies that have something to do with wrestling.
Could be anything. Could be the story. Could be the plot. Could be one of the executive producers. It's just got to rope around somehow to professional wrestling.
We're going to review everything from the Scorpion King to Ready to Rumble.
From The Wrestler to Scooby-Doo WrestleMania Mystery.
So grab your popcorn
and put on your elbow pads.
And join us in the theater of the mind every week for Ropes to Reels.
Streaming now on the Wrasslun Show Network.
The news from Raw had a lot of interesting championship picture ramifications for various titles. Start things off with the Women's Championship. A rematch from SummerSlam, Alexa Bliss taking on Sasha Banks. And in actually a bit of a surprise turn, Bliss won the championship back. Cleanly, I might add. Really has me wondering what direction they're going in, especially with what happened after the match. So Bliss beats Sasha. She wins the championship back. She's celebrating. Nia Jax hits the ring, puts Bliss on her shoulder, Macho Man and Elizabeth style, holding her up, big smiles. And then Jax Batista'd Bliss. She didn't give the thumbs up and then thumbs down, but just dropped her straight back and picked up the title and held it over her head. So obviously, Nia Jax has staked her claim on the women's championship. Now, I'm not frowning on this direction, because I'm not really sure the exact direction they're going, aside from Nia Jax wanting to be women's champion. But what concerns me about this is that Bliss and Jax are both heels, and I'm not saying heels can't fight. I'm not saying the championship shouldn't be important to the whole division. But one of my gripes about the women's division when it was the Divas division and before the whole Revolution thing was the lack of care they had for continuity and for storylines. And by they, I'm referring to creative, not to the women themselves. But it felt very much back then like creative didn't care who was heel or face, because women would flip-flop on a whim for no reason. Brie and Nikki Bella were feuding, and this isn't even that long ago, only a couple years. And Brie lost a match where she had to basically be Nikki's servant for a month. And they played it up for a few weeks, and then suddenly Brie was just helping Nikki win matches and was a heel, and suddenly they were just all fine and good again. Because they didn't care about heels or faces. They just saw all women as being catty and, oh, well, they'll just flip-flop heel or face, it doesn't matter. So this sudden turn on Alexa Bliss by Nia Jax has me wondering if they're doing the same thing. Unless this is supposed to act as a babyface turn for Bliss, which I hope not. Number one, because Bliss is such a good heel. Much better heel than she is a babyface. And number two, if that is the case, it's the Enzo and Cass philosophy where they'd be trying to get a babyface over by creating heat for the heel, not by actually trying to get the babyface over. But again, this is all speculation. Bliss isn't necessarily a babyface. Nia Jax is just showing interest in the women's championship, and that is actually a good thing. I'm just hoping creative isn't falling back on old habits when it comes to the women's division. Speaking of the women's division, we had another women's match on Raw. Emma took on Mickie James and finally got a victory. Then Emma grabbed the microphone and began proclaiming that she started the women's revolution. Not necessarily untrue. A lot of people have claimed that her matches with Paige were actually very much the start of women's wrestling in WWE being taken seriously. I just hope this amounts to something for Emma. Doesn't have to lead her to the women's championship right away or anything, but she is a good talent, and it's just, I feel like she still hasn't recovered from the Emelina thing. I don't know if creative doesn't have anything for her or what, but hopefully something sticks. Switching gears over to the Intercontinental Championship, The Miz was informed that there was going to be a battle royal to determine the number one contender for the Intercontinental Championship, and that they would be facing Miz for the IC title next week on Raw. The A-lister obviously was not happy about this. Fun battle royal, not a lot of notes to take from it. Mostly that Big Show looked really, really weird without facial hair. because I think this is the first time he hasn't had facial hair since he started shaving his head, however many years ago that was. Even when he was teamed with Jericho, he at least had like a chin goatee. But he's been rocking the full beard for so long, it was very strange. Matt Sukram said he looked like a giant Cabbage Patch doll. Not completely untrue. Interesting note, speaking of Big Show, he was eliminated by the club with some help from Finn Balor. I don't know if this is potential foreshadowing or if this is just a little bit of fan service. I'm leaning towards fan service right now, but it'll be interesting to see if this was a little bit of seed planting as well. Jason Jordan was in there right up till the end and was my pick to win it, but surprisingly, Jeff Hardy took this match. I have zero problem with them letting the Hardys do some singles work in their return. I just wasn't expecting him to win this IC title shot. I'm wondering if this was I don't want to say last-minute decision, but given that the Hardys' feud with the Revival got halted due to injury, maybe they're looking at a different direction, so they're going to start some solo work with Matt and Jeff. And if that is the case, I'll be very interested to see where the one-time broken superstar ends up while his brother fights for the Intercontinental title. The biggest story to come out of Monday Night Raw, of course, was the face-to-face between John Cena and Roman Reigns. The Doctor of Thugonomics and the Big Dog. So they had a very heated exchange in the ring. It very much made it sound like a shoot promo. There was a lot of kind of insider innuendo to a lot of what they had to say, although by all accounts the entire promo, as is often the case, was scripted. So I don't know if either of them went off script or if they were told they could just say what they needed to say. I will say that Roman sounds a lot more natural than he did a couple years ago with his whole Suffer and Succotash promos. So at least it seems like since beating The Undertaker that Reigns is starting to find his voice when it comes to promos in the ring. That's a good thing. The two then signed the contract for their match at No Mercy, so it's official, which again has me curious because I feel like this is a match you could definitely sell a WrestleMania on. Now, just because they're wrestling at No Mercy, I understand that does not mean that they won't wrestle at WrestleMania. But it just seems like there could have been a slower build, especially considering Cena could get away with being a part-timer from now until WrestleMania. Maybe they'll have the match, there'll be some shenanigans involved, maybe we won't get a straight-up finish, maybe one of them will be kayfabe injured, who knows? But I suspect if this feud weaves its way all the way into the Royal Rumble, and these two are involved in each other's eliminations, then we're definitely going to see them collide at WrestleMania as well. And in typical WWE fashion, two guys that aren't getting along, naturally, let's put them in a tag team match together. The Doctor and the Dog took on the Club and got the victory, although there was a lot of one-upsmanship between the two. Not surprising. Pretty standard match. There was nothing standard about the Thespian Threat's victory on SmackDown. I'm going to look at the blue brand right after this.
Hey, it's at Adam Coulton.
And at Matthew Sukram.
We do the Wrasslun Show podcast.
And it is tons of fun.
What happened on Raw this week? What went down on SmackDown? We're going to tell you what we think.
Who's going to win the big match at the upcoming pay-per-view? Do they still call them pay-per-views?
We run the gamut. Everything from Cuban hotel guys to bloodthirsty Canadians. My wife just texted, I'm going to cut someone.
Case in point, bloodthirsty Canadians.
It's the Wrasslun Show podcast.
Streaming now on the Wrasslun Show Network.
Aiden English took on Sami Zayn yet again. And just when you thought the underdog from Montreal might finally get one over on the thespian threats, alas, he does not. Kevin Owens came into the ring, yelled at the referee, took the referee's shirt off, kicked the referee out of the ring, proceeded to put the referee shirt on himself, and officiate the end of the match. Owens then pop-up powerbombed Sami Zayn, and as Aiden English pinned him, made what some would call a fast count, but I would think it was pretty fair. At least when it comes to Aiden English. Okay, yeah, I was a little bit fast. But it seems Aiden English does have Sami Zayn's number. This makes me happy. What else makes me happy is the in-ring debut, or I should say return, of Shelton Benjamin. He and Chad Gable took on the Ascension. Obviously, a safe bet. We know who's going to win this match. I'm okay with that, although I do want to see the Ascension ascend a little bit in the ranks, as opposed to playing second fiddle to Breezango in their little skits. Decent chemistry from Benjamin and Gable, but there was a moment in the match, I don't know if this was intentional to the storyline, and I suppose I won't know until this moves further, but at one point, Gable tagged Benjamin in, and he was holding the opponent for maybe a double suplex, maybe something that American Alpha used to do as a double team move. Shelton came in, kind of stood there for a second, and basically just kind of shoved Gable out of the way and started beating on the Ascension. So it seemed like a miscue. It seemed like not dissension between the two, that is way too strong of a word to use, but a bit of a hiccup. And I don't know if it was a kayfabe thing or not. I kind of hope it was, because I think it would be an interesting wrinkle to have in the team where Gable is so excited to have Benjamin as his tag team partner, but at the same time so used to the way things used to work with Jordan that he's trying to put Benjamin into Jordan's spot, but they're two different people, so it's not necessarily going to work. I kind of like that. I would like to see a little bit of friction between Benjamin and Gable. Not a lot. I don't necessarily want to see like shoving and arguing or whatever, but a little bit of friction before they can get onto the same page. I just think that would be something interesting to the two of them, to this new tag team. With Kevin Owens officially out of the U.S. title picture, at least as long as AJ Styles is champion, Styles has renewed the United States Open Challenge. And if I can just say for a second, I like that this has become a thing with the U.S. title. Like, it was one thing for Cena to do it, but now Owens has also done it. AJ Styles is doing it again. It's nice to see. I'd like to see this become a regular thing, regardless of who's champion. It doesn't have to be every single week, but I like that the U.S. title has become this fighting champions championship. Much like Owens, it was a good Canadian boy who challenged for the U.S. title. As the Perfect 10 himself, Ty Dillinger, came out to the ring. Before he could hit the ring, though, he was attacked by Baron Corbin. Dillinger did finally make it back into the ring and said, yeah, let's go. They had the match. Great effort by Dillinger, but it was a very short match. Obviously, it's expected that the beating that he took from Corbin prior to the match led to the easier victory from Styles. But again, it was a good match. I wouldn't mind seeing these two tangle again in the future and be given a little bit more time. I also wouldn't mind Dillinger teaming up with Zayn a little more, because I really enjoy their tag team chemistry. But all of this was clearly meant to propel this new feud between AJ Styles and Baron Corbin. And this feud is definitely going to see if there's any truth to the story of Corbin being in the doghouse. What a lot of people thought after he cashed in and lost his money in the bank. But if the next SmackDown pay-per-view, or maybe even as far down the line as Survivor Series, if Corbin manages to win the U.S. Championship, safe bet he's not really in the doghouse then. Safe bet that the lone wolf isn't in the doghouse if that happens. Someone who might be in the doghouse is Mike Kanellis. I don't think he's actually done anything wrong, but how quickly he's kind of fallen. Jobbed out pretty easily to Bobby Roode this week. Roode clearly being pushed as a babyface on SmackDown. I'm okay with that for the most part. There's only one thing that kind of bugs me about it. Because he was a heel on NXT, I do kind of wish they had let him finish his NXT run prior to bringing him up. Because if you're going to have him be a heel on one show and a face on the other, it's not like it's somebody who's a heel in Ring of Honor and they come in as babyface on Raw and then finish their Ring of Honor dates. Like, this is the same company. He's a heel on one and a face on the other. But I do absolutely understand the babyface push on the main roster. Between that amazing theme song and his glorious taunt that gets the entire crowd chanting glorious along with him, it's understandable. But yeah, poor Mike Kanellis starting to slip slowly down the mid-card. Although, at the same time, Ty Dillinger's down in that area, Aiden English, Sami Zayn. So, SmackDown's mid-card really isn't a terrible place to be, at least if you look at the talent pool that's down there. Speaking of talent that's slipped down the ranks a little bit, Dolph Ziggler cut an excellent promo, which is no real surprise. It's always been great with words, but it was a very frustrated promo, sounded very much like a shoot from the heart promo about how he has busted his butt for the last 10 years and has nothing to show for it. Yet he sees people like the quote-unquote charisma vacuum that is Finn Balor, and he mentioned many others, get further and further ahead than he. Ziggler went on to say that people seem to want all flash and no substance. Well, they're going to get that next week. What that means, I guess we'll have to tune in. But I'm interested because I've always been a fan of Ziggler. He's great in the ring. He's a great promo. It's one of those cases where he has all the tools. I can't even say all the potential because he's proven that he can have great matches. For a long time, they were double booking him on pay-per-view. He has all the tools. It's just, I don't know if creative's not taking a chance with him or what. I know things really slipped after his World Heavyweight title run that got cut short due to a concussion. So I don't know if that's given the office cold feet with Ziggler or what. But I'm always up for anything he has to offer. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this all-flash, no-substance Dolph Ziggler is next week. Speaking of next week, we're going to see a Women's Championship rematch, Naomi versus Natty. I like Naomi, but I do hope Natty holds on to the title for a little while, especially considering what they just did with Bliss and Banks. I don't think we need to see flip-flopping of both women's championships, so I'd definitely like to see Natty hold on to it. In tag team action, the Usos took on the New Day, non-title, but the winner of the match would get to pick the stipulation for their next tag title match. And the security guards of the Uso Penitentiary, Jimmy and Jay, came out on top. So we'll have to wait until next week to see exactly what stipulation they're going to pick for this tag title match. Speaking of tag teams, Breezango, I gotta be honest, I'm really liking these fashion files. It's one of those things that started off as kind of a, oh, that's cute sort of thing, but really evolved. And I think that's because they were really willing to keep it fresh. Like, they kept bouncing to different shows. It wasn't just the Law and Order parody the whole time. They did various things. They had Breeze go through that whole Master of Disguise thing. It's a fun little entertainment side of sports entertainment that we get every week. And I gotta be honest, it's become pretty funny. I really enjoy it. And if I had to make any comparison to a past tag team for Breezango, they remind me a lot of Edge and Christian. Back when Edge and Christian did their 5-second poses, they always had something to get heat from whatever city they were in, usually involving sports teams or whatever. It's always pretty fun. And that's what they remind me of. Like, it's that same sense of humor, that same sort of style. They don't take themselves too seriously, yet at the same time, they can take themselves seriously in the ring. And sometimes I wish they would, or at least I wish creative would take them more seriously. A little more on that in a minute. Actually, you know what? Right now, speaking of Breezango, there was a moment where Nakamura interrupted Jinder Mahal cutting a promo with the Singh brothers. The Singhs were apologizing. They offered to kiss Jinder's feet, and then Shinsuke's music hit. He came out, started getting beaten down by all three of them. And the whole time the three were beating him down, I'm like, you know who I would love to see come out here and help Nakamura out? Breezango. That would have been perfect. You had a babyface tag team to even up the odds, and it would have been a moment where they could be taken seriously as someone who can help out the World Championship contender. Now, obviously, that didn't happen. Randy Orton came out, and it makes sense because later in the night, it was Shinsuke and Randy versus Jinder and Rusev. So I understand why they did that. But I just thought, aside from this tag team main event, I thought that would have been a perfect moment to have Fandango and Tyler Breeze come out, help him out, because with the whole rock star artist persona that Nakamura has, it's something that Breeze and Fandango could really play off of, so they could still have that same sort of sense of humor, yet at the same time be taken seriously. It's something that was talked about on the Wrasslun show a few weeks ago about, can comedy gimmicks really get over in the main event? And in a world championship scenario, maybe not. But the New Day has proved that if you can take care of things in the ring, in the tag team division, you can have a sense of humor and balance it with a serious side as well. New Day are the mini-wheats of tag teams. They have their fun frosted side, and they have their serious work side. I just think Breezango could be mini-wheats as well. Now I'm getting hungry, so I better take a break. Come back with some NXT right after this.
I'm Andrew Kent, and here's 5 reasons to listen to the We Have Till 5 podcast on the Wrasslun Show Network. Number 5, I'm handsome. Not that you would notice. Number 4, I love wrestling. You love wrestling. We both love wrestling, so you'll love this podcast. Number 3, I talk about everything, from worst pay-per-view names to best Chris Jericho feuds. Number 2, lists are pretty fun. And number 1, everyone's got their favorites. Where does mine line up with yours? Find out every Friday on the Wrasslun Show Network.
NXT this week opened up with Sanity laid out in the parking lot and what looked to be Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish walking away. That was dark, but it's probably a safe bet that it was them, especially with what happened at TakeOver. Drew McIntyre opened the show, cutting a great promo, which was interrupted by one Roderick Strong, who basically laid down a challenge saying that he's not going anywhere, and he does want that NXT championship. Came so close against Bobby Roode, and he knows he can get there again. He just wants a shot. Speaking of guys who have had a shot at the title during Bobby Roode's run, Hideo Itami taking on former friend Cassius Ohno next week. And Ohno requested from William Regal that it be a no disqualification match. So it's set. Safe bet that's going to be the main event. Looking forward to that one. Speaking of the main event, we got the blow off from Bobby Roode and Roderick Strong. Really dug this match. Strong came out on top, feeling like he got some retribution. Then McIntyre came out, stood on the ramp, didn't really have too many words for Strong, but just raised the NXT Championship up. It's possible that he might have had words for Strong if he had the chance, though, but it didn't take long before Adam Cole, Fish, and O'Reilly jumped the NXT champion yet again. Much like after he won the title at TakeOver, they beat him down on the ramp until security and William Regal showed up, and the trio took off. Oh, Regal was livid. I gotta admit, William Regal, possibly one of the best facial expressions in the industry. Whether he's disgusted, furious, dancing, always love the expressions on Regal's face. But this one definitely was livid, as he followed the trio all the way outside. I'm sure Regal will have words for the NXT Universe about those three next week. And as I said last week, this beatdown happened on NXT TV. I'm not as harsh about the three as I was last week. I know last week I was complaining a lot about Cole, Fish, and O'Reilly beating down McIntyre after TakeOver. This one, a little less hot about. Obviously, Cole's going to be hot-shotted right into the NXT title picture. But one thing that does make me happy with the face-to-face between Drew and Strong at the beginning of the night, and with McIntyre coming out after Strong's match, I like that Roderick Strong is not out of the NXT title picture yet. That makes me happy. The Messiah of the Backbreaker is a fantastic talent and definitely deserves to be in that title hunt. But that's just my opinion. What do you think? Should Strong still be in that title hunt? Should he not? Should NXT just throw that title on Adam Cole? Let me know at the Go Home Spot on Twitter. Leave a comment on iTunes, rate and review. Leave a comment on YouTube. We've started posting these up on YouTube along with all our videos. Speaking of which, you'll get a match of the week out of me. A little clue, it's one I've talked about a little bit, but I'll go more in depth on YouTube, so stay tuned for that. I'm Jeff DeHaan for the Go Home Spot. Sometimes you go big, sometimes you go home.